Morning, and we are in Doctrine and Covenants 2 and Joseph Smith history, verses 27 to 65. And the theme is hearts of the children shall turn to their fathers. And of course, it's about Joseph Smith seeing the angel Moroni. And I'm just going to read the heading here. It had been 3 years since God the Father and His Son Jesus Christ appeared to Joseph Smith in the grove, and Joseph hadn't received any additional revelation since then. He began to wonder whether the Lord was displeased with him. Like all of us, he had made mistakes. He felt condemned by them, yet God had a work for him to do. And the work Joseph was called to do was connected to what God asks of us. Joseph would bring forth the Book of Mormon. We are invited to share its message. Joseph would receive the priesthood keys to turn the hearts of the children to their fathers. We can now receive ordinances for our ancestors in temples. Joseph was told of prophecies that would soon be fulfilled. We are called to help fulfill these prophecies. As we take part in God's work, we can expect to face opposition, even persecution, just as the prophet did. But we can also have faith that the Lord will make us instruments in His hands, just as He did for Joseph. And then it says, see also saints. As I go through saints, it's quite good actually. But I don't know how much I would want to put this in the podcast, because it's a good narrative and it's something that you should read. I think the thing that I get from saints is if all you do is read about the experience through the scriptures that we have, you might miss some of the more personable things mentioned in here. One thing I didn't realize is when one is they address the thing about the seer stones. One day while Joseph was helping a neighbor dig a well, he came across a small stone buried deep in the earth. Aware that people sometimes use special stones to search for lost objects or hidden treasure, Joseph wondered if he found such a stone. Looking into it, he saw things invisible to the natural eye. So he was shown Joseph's gift for using the stone impressed family members who saw it as a sign of divine favor. Even though he had a gift of a seer, Joseph was still unsure if God was pleased with him and could no longer feel the forgiveness and peace he had felt after his vision with the Father of the Father and the Son. Instead, he often felt condemned for his weakness and imperfections. If you think about it, he has a vision while he's 15, and think about when you guys were 15, and then try to think, or 14, I guess, 15th year, and then for 3 years, he basically doesn't have any remarkable vision or anything. He just goes about his life doing the same things he was doing before, knowing that he's not supposed to join any church, so he's not doing that, but he's not having anything that's making him feel like he's done anything great with what he's learned. But finally, he's starting to want to do more. And 17, between 14 and 17, is a big maturity change. Being 17 is a lot different than being 14. But he knows he can get answers to his prayers, and he feels like he must. He shared laughter with his brothers. He had stayed up late that evening listening to his family talk about different churches and doctrines they taught. Now everyone was asleep, and the house was quiet. In the darkness of his room, Joseph began to pray, pleading fervently to God that God would forgive his sins. He longed to commune with a heavenly messenger who could assure him of his standing before the Lord and give him the knowledge of the gospel that he had been promised in the grove. Joseph knew God had answered his prayers before, and he is full of confidence that he would answer him again. Now, the next part is really detailed in the scriptures we'll read this week. So I don't even think we have much on here. So it's not as detailed in this. So first he was afraid, but peace soon filled him. The angel called him by name and introduced himself as Moroni. He said God had forgiven Joseph of his sins and now had a work for him to do, and he declared that Joseph's name would be spoken for good and evil among all people. And I think that's really significant. I mean, I always thought, well, if I was going to make something up, the last thing I'd say is that my name was going to be spoken for evil among all people. I might say, well, everybody's going to love me. That's what the angel said. But Moroni was speaking with a knowledge that Joseph Smith did not have, and I think it must have been something that really strengthened him, knowing that his own whatever he did, there would be good and evil spoken of him, because as the years went by and people did call him many things and say many things about him, he was prepared. He knew that would happen. Now Moroni spoke of the nearby of plates buried in a nearby hill, and then he talks about what would be there, and we're going to talk about that when we read the other stuff. And then the quotations of prophecies of Isaiah, Joel, Micah, and others. Will cover that again as well. And then he's given a commandment to take care of the plates and show them to no one unless otherwise instructed, warning him that he would be destroyed if he disobeyed this counsel. Light then gathered around Moroni, and he ascended. And this happens 3 times. And more information comes, and we'll talk about that more. But then the next morning, one thing I never really thought about is this next morning I'm picturing him out in the field with his dad, but here he's got his brother Alvin there, and probably his other brothers as well, and Hiram was probably there. I don't know, but it definitely says Alvin was there. And says soon he stopped working, and Alvin noticed We must keep to the work, he called out to Joseph, or we shall not get our task done. And then, as he couldn't do it, his father sends him home. He goes over the fence. We'll go across, do this in the next little while. And he was exhausted. As he's trying to go across the fence, he sees Angel Moroni again. And Angel Moroni tells him, well, go and tell your dad. I didn't do this just for you to keep it to yourself. You need to go and tell your dad. And when he does, Joseph Sr. wept when his son told him about the angel and his message. It's a vision of God. It was a vision from God, he said. Attend to it. So Joseph has to go out immediately to the hill, Moroni. Joseph thought about the plates as he walked. Even though he knew they were sacred, it was hard for him to resist wondering how much they were worth, as he had heard of tales of hidden treasure protected by guardian spirits. But Moroni and the plates he had described were different from these stories. Moroni was a heavenly messenger appointed by God to deliver the record safely to his chosen seer, and the plates were valuable not because they were gold, but because they were witnesses of Christ. Now the thing is going to the hill and looking beneath the boulder, he tries to reach out and realizes he can't. In fact, 3 times he gets shocked, and he says, "Why can't I obtain the book?" he cried out. "Because you have not kept the commandments of the Lord," said a voice nearby, and Joseph turns and saw Moroni. At once, the message from the night before flooded in his mind, and he understood that he had forgotten the record's true purpose. He started to pray, and his mind and soul awoke to the Holy Spirit. "Look," Moroni commanded. Another vision unfolded in Joseph and before Joseph, and a lot of this, I don't think this part is written in the first account, but this is stuff that was saved by his family and in journals and things. He saw Satan surrounded by his numberless hosts. All this is shown, the good and the evil, the holy and the impure, the glory of God and the power of darkness, the angel declared, that you may know hereafter the 2 powers and never be influenced or overcome by that wicked one. So then he instructs Joseph to purify his heart and strengthen his mind. Can you imagine, though? He gets this in his head that this is where he finds these plates, and he gets those so close, and then find out, well, wait, you need to keep coming back for several years. That's not an easy task. And at the same time, you need to purify your heart. And the thing else was so it says, when can I have the plates? This 22nd day of September next. So 1 year is what he's saying at this point. If you bring the right person. Who's the right person? Your oldest brother. So Alvin is the oldest brother. And Alvin, I can see Joseph having this hope and things. I always think this is the saddest part of the thing, because before the year's up, Joseph, okay, in this story, it's telling us that Joseph tells his family, unlike the first vision where it seemed he was not didn't want to share it too much because of persecution. He does share it very readily, this experience. Well, he did try to keep it in until he told his father, and now his father probably was like, okay, you've got to tell us more, what's happened. And so everybody gets around and Joseph starts to tell him, and then he goes to bed. Then Joseph shares more the next evening, and Alvin is there and really felt impressed by it. But the thing is, one autumn morning, less than 2 months after Moroni's visit, Alvin came home with an intense pain in his stomach. Bent over in agony, he begged his father to call for help. When the doctor finally arrived, he gave Alvin a large dose of chalky medicine, but it made things worse. Alvin lay in bed for days, writhing in pain, knowing he would probably die, and called for Joseph. Do everything that lies in your power to obtain the records, Alvin said. Be faithful in receiving the instruction, keeping every commandment that is given you. And he died a short time later, and sorrow settled over the house. At the funeral, a preacher said, all but said Joseph had gone to hell, using his death to warn others that what would happen unless God intervened to save them. Joseph Sr. was furious. His son had been a good young man and could not believe that God would damn him. With Alvin gone, talk of the plates had ended. Now, to me, when we have experiences, we want to just see things progress, one thing after another, and just everything in a nice linear fashion. We want to see it done a certain way. And even here, it seems that the Lord said, here, this is how it's going to be. You're going to come back in a year with Alvin, and everything's going to be fine, and then Alvin dies. We don't know why the Lord did that. I don't know that it says anything here of why he does it. I didn't see anything. But maybe it was a way of purifying Joseph Smith even further. I know in my life things are not all straightforward. Every time I think that I've got everything worked out, it seems that things go a different way. And so I can learn from this, and I hope you can learn, that just because we're following the way the Lord wants us to, it's not always as we see it that it's going to happen. And we find out further down here that he comes down to get the plates. He does something wrong, and he can't obtain them. He actually does something so simple as putting the plates down for a second to cover up the stone that had the other stuff in it. And when he turns around, the plates are gone, and he's going, oh no, and the angel says, hey, you did it wrong, you put them down. Something simple as that. And he's realizing that he has to do everything exactly the way that he's supposed to do it, and he has to come back later to get them. And I think that would be really difficult to have to do that each time, and to feel there a little bit of disappointment and desire. I mean, a whole year's gone by, and another year's going to go by, another. It's not going to be an easy trip to get these plates, but he does it. He does what he has to do, and he has a family that stays by him during all this time. I think that's significant. And I think it's interesting they put this in here. Father asked at once if he had the plates. No, he said, I could not get them. Did you see them? I saw them, but I could not get them. And Joseph Smith Sr. says, I would have taken them if I had been in your place. And then Joseph says, you don't know what you say. I could not get them, for the angel of the Lord would not let me. You can feel the disappointment just in those words as reported. And sometimes we'll find disappointments, but we stay true still, and we still keep going, just as Joseph Smith did in these times. And I hope, if that's one thing you can take from this, is that Joseph Smith wasn't alone. As we read at the beginning here, these, where are we? Are we on the same? Yeah. That like Joseph Smith, all of us make mistakes. Like Joseph Smith, God asks us to do things like bring forth the Book of Mormon, share its message, help do ordinances in the temple, and take part in God's work. And I hope you can think of how you can take part in God's work today. And I hope you have a wonderful day.